Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm Jada Flazanes, your producer and empowerment strategist. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today, we're talking about rebirthing the planet with Dr. Christiane Northrup. It's the third time she's been on the show, and it's a conversation that will probably get me in trouble. I'm not going to lie. And here's what I just want you to know. I am not about controlling any of you. I don't really care what you do. I don't care, meaning I respect your choices. And as long as they're yours and you don't force them on me, I don't really care what you do. I'm here to support education, information, having a point of view, critical thinking, researching, and looking at things in different ways. And so I've been, quiet about COVID for a really long time. And because I know that my opinion is not popular, but it doesn't really matter, because what the bottom line is that I'm not asking anyone to change to please me. I'm not pretending that what you do will negatively affect me directly if I don't let it. So that's the position I'm taking on today's episode. We are going to skew this positive. We do talk about some things that aren't, but we do skew it to what we can do about it as a collective, as a society, as an individual to impact change and rebirth, so to speak. And we do use different scenarios of rebirthing in terms of a woman's body to represent what we're talking about in terms of our own expansion and evolution. I've been afraid, to be honest, which isn't cool, because this is my show and I created it to give a voice to ideas that I was having and to information that I was having back when it was just law of attraction work, and of course all the alternative medicine and health work that I was doing in the world. But I don't like that I've actually sat on this. So I was going to wait to publish this interview till the end of the year. And only because of the rebirthing theme, I thought it would be a really nice way to end the year and to start 2022. But I am publishing it sooner because I want to keep the momentum that was created with Dr. William Davis's last episode, Undoctored, and because I'm about to do another podcast called Releasing the Goddess Within. And that show is something I'm only doing for myself. And I'm really committed at this point in my life for being completely honest. And it's not that I've lied. It's that you have to ask yourself sometimes, does my opinion matter? Does anybody care? Will it change anybody? Does it make an impact or a difference? And I never want to come from the place of trying to shove my beliefs down someone else's throat to get them to change their point of view or behavior to please me. So there's never really been a reason to be more transparent, I guess, because I knew that it would upset people. And I knew that people would want to get mad at me or want to blame me or hold me accountable for things happening to them. And so I've just been a little quiet, and that hasn't felt good, I'll be honest. When I was done with this interview with Dr. Northrup, I was on fire and so excited, but also simultaneously knowing that I could get in trouble for it. So I thought, you know what? I'm done. I have to live my life and be authentic. And my message to you is I want you to do the same. I can't help you, teach you, lead you, inspire you, or be an example if I'm not willing to do the same. I am still in the last few weeks before I'm going to close enrollment for the mastermind. And I've been struggling with the thoughts of wanting to build a authentic community of people committed to themselves, to their practices, to their zone of genius, to their truth. And it doesn't have to be at the expense of anyone else. It just shouldn't be in the dark. And if people who are not moving forward, if you're someone who's not taking action in your life because you're afraid of criticism, you know what? I've been holding this interview for a couple of weeks doing the same thing. Now, I put myself out there every week, every month, every year. I've got haters. I've got people that get mad and say nasty things. And I've taken the work, the emotional work that I've done over the years, and I've learned how to understand that. And I've learned how to not allow it to rule me. And I am stepping out today to say this is what I believe, and this is who I am, and this is what I know. And this is what I know without a shadow of a doubt. And if you don't agree with it, that's awesome. Cool. You don't have to change your beliefs. But I'm not going to hide anymore. And the new show that I'm going to do is definitely not hiding. So if you're someone who is not sure yet if you're on my team, and I don't mean, and again, I'm open to all shapes and sizes and belief systems, but in terms of this sort of authentic honesty, this allowing yourself to be who you are and to do it in a way that isn't about changing others, but about just speaking your truth. If you've been holding back from speaking your truth, find a safe space to do it. Find a community to be yourself. There is nothing more important than being yourself. And so while I was going to wait to put this episode out at the end of the year, I've changed my mind because I'm tired of not being myself completely. So I hope that you get something out of today if you decide to continue listening. If you're kind of playing for the same team, please do not share this episode with someone else who isn't open. My goal here is not to piss people off. My goal here is to be honest. And if someone can't listen to another opposing point of view with other facts that doctors have, that other doctors aren't telling you about, then that's just not the right kind of energy. So again, if someone's not open, please, please, please just join my community a little harder or be involved a little bit more for some of the people who are free to discuss and have different opinions, but are free to respect those opinions because we have information that we're sharing with each other, but we're not going to hold back and we're not going to pretend and we're not going to keep it quiet any longer. We're going to be who we are. My message for you right now for the end of 2021 is to think about who you want to be in 2022. And that doesn't mean I'm not about going out and protesting. I'm not about being angry. I'm not about that at all. I'm about finding the truth, being the truth, living your truth, and not being afraid to do that because of retribution. And sometimes it means standing up for something in a way that's going to cause attention. And you have to decide if your silence or your repression of who you really are is worth it. So again, short plug for my community. If you're interested in living your truth, following your path in your zone of genius in 2022, and you have a business or you want to start a business, I've got a few spots left for the mastermind. It's jj'sinnercirclemastermind.com. And, I'm pretty clear about who I want to be communing with in 2022 and moving forward. So only if it calls to you, if it feels like it resonates, reach out and let's jump on a Zoom chat really quick after you fill out the application, and we'll see. I don't think I need to introduce you to Dr. Christiane Northrup. If you don't know who she is, this might not be an episode for you to listen to. So she's written a ton of books. She's one of the best gynecologists turned health advocates for menopause, women's health on every level. I really resonate with so many things that she does and what she stands for and the things that she has taught over the years. So if you are not a fan of hers, then I would skip this episode. If you're a fan of hers, then you know who she is and you're going to learn more about her. This is her third episode on this show. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's episode and feel inspired in some way about what you get to create moving forward. Welcome everyone to the show. Oh, I am very excited for today. Today is our third episode with Dr. Christiane Northrup on my show. And I first want to acknowledge that today, as we're recording, is the full moon in Aries. And we both showed up today wearing red. It's why I chose red for the microphone cover. And if you are listening to, because I have a blue one and a black one, if you're listening to this on the podcast, come on over to jjflazanes.tv because we're going to be doing the video there. If you happen to find me and find this video through YouTube, and because you're searching Dr. Northrup, I just want to give you a shout out that I am not a host. I'm an empowerment strategist and a producer, which means I'm going to have a conversation with her. If you'd like to just hear Dr. Northrup, then I am sure you can find places. Where would be a good place, Dr. Northrup, that they could go just to get you, because they may not like me?
Okay, just to get me, you can listen to me reading every book that I've ever written on hayhouseaudio.com. drnorthrup.com houses everything. But I have recorded all of my books like Dodging Energy Vampires and The Wisdom of Menopause and Goddesses Never Age. So you can listen to me for hours, just me. I also have a Telegram page. That's where I'm putting all my deep dive intel at this particular time. I have a Facebook page that I use to bring you various offers and so on, but I can barely get on Facebook most of the time.
And you have a new Instagram page. You have a new
Yes,
Instagram page?
but I don't even know what it is.
Women's health doc?
No, that got taken down. That got taken down. So I lost two big Instagram channels. I now have one. And this is very funny because it is Dr. period M period HORTHRUP, Horthrup, Dr. M. Horthrup. So they don't know where I am at this point. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Maybe just videos of me playing the harp and bringing in my cat and telling you to go over to my Telegram channel. That may be what I will do.
Perfect. Well, I just wanted to let everyone know who searches you out here and finds me on YouTube because they want more of you. So I'm just letting you know that
a YouTube channel that is just, it's straight women's medicine. Yeah.
Perfect. So if you are interested in more of Dr. Northrup, because you and I don't jive, totally cool, go over there. Otherwise, this is my show and I'm going to have a conversation with her. So that's how this goes. Just wanted to let you know. All right. So today's topic is about rebirthing the planet. And before we started recording, I really just wanted to acknowledge what the contributions you've been making to this movement that's happening, and how you said that your entire life's work has been about rebirth in some way, shape, or form. And a lot of the work that you do and have done, and the books that you have written and the courses you've created are really about a form of rebirth. And so we can talk about what's going on right now and how it relates to us as a society, as a collective, as an energetic expanding process in motion right now, and how it affects the individual, both as a woman, as a man, as a collective, as a human body that's experiencing these things. So I want to go over all of that, but I do need to acknowledge, because not only today is the full moon in Aries, it also is your rising sign. It's my Venus. And so again, we're wearing red and pink and different colors to acknowledge today's full moon energy that's going to help bring a lot more of a punch, if you will, to this episode. So expect it to be feisty, expect it to be fiery, expect it to be a little controversial. If you're not into that, move on. Thank you. And let's continue. So what do you want to say, Dr. Northrup, about this whole rebirthing process?
Okay. My North Node is in Aries. My rising sign.
I thought it was your rising. Oh, it's your North Node.
But that's okay. North Node. I mean, so basically I was born to be at the bow of an icebreaker. Boom. And I've always been about 20 years ahead, and I have never changed not one single thing that I have been about. What happened is that cancel culture started. And then those of us who've been telling the truth for 30, 40 years have started to be canceled. So we need to know what that is. However, this kind of energy is like just before you're fully dilated in labor. The woman who's at 9 centimeters, very often she'll say, I'm done. I am out of here. I can't take this for another minute. And then boom, she's fully dilated and ready to push. Now, that's a very quick, that happens within hours. In perimenopause, it's the same energy as you get, generally speaking, estrogen dominance in the face of excess stress hormones from all the unresolved stuff in your life that you've pushed under the carpet every premenstrual time that you possibly could. Oh no, it's not me, it's my hormones. Okay. So that comes up to hit you between the eyes in perimenopause, but all of them are grow or die. Every single time, grow or die. So when a woman is in labor, the process of labor has taken over her body. There's not much she's going to do because the uterus just keeps contracting. At perimenopause, she can deny what's going on, but that will catch up with her. It's interesting that age 50, that's when we start telling everybody, well, if you haven't already, you need to start colonoscopies and you need to take blood pressure medication and you need an anti-cholesterol and you need hormone replacement, because from now on, it's all downhill. That's what the culture teaches women, but it teaches women all the way along the line that you cannot trust your body, that it's a lemon. So what this situation is doing on planet Earth, because now all of humanity is grow or die. All of humanity is grow or die. I follow Oracle Girl, Jacqueline Hobbs, and she says everything now that is not of nature will die, will die. What we have is an agenda of biologic life being invaded by technological advances, so that instead of the Sistine Chapel with the finger of Adam and the finger of God, we have the finger of a robot and the finger of a human. So The Matrix, I've always said, is a documentary. It's not actually a movie that is fiction. In fact, I was talking to Gene Decode, and he said there's actually no such thing as science fiction. Everything we can conceive of is actually happening somewhere. So right now, we have on Earth, think about it, everybody. Just for 1 second, please think about it. We have this dread disease that 99.9% of people survive. And yet, whether you have antibodies that'll last you till the end of time or not, you need to get it's called by Michael Jaco, a Jabberdo. He says you need a Jabberdo to go to work. I was just in New York City at a rally in Times Square. We had probably 2,500 people, very bracing, beautiful day. And then I went into a juice bar to get a juice. So you pay, you tell them what you want. And then they say, is that for here or to go? And if you want to sit inside, they say, I need to see your vaccine passport and your ID. And then you say, I'm not giving you those. And then they say, well, then you can't stay here. However, here's what happens. You're in this little place. It's a little spot. You can stand there for the next 30 minutes while they make your juice. That's okay. But you can't sit down with your juice. And the place was as big as a shoebox. So there are many, many things about this agenda that make absolutely no medical sense. And yet, every moment that one puts the truth on Instagram, social media, the fact checkers tell you that you're wrong, even if the facts come from the CDC website. I am proudly one of the disinformation dozen. We were targeted by the Center for the Countering of Digital Hate, which is run by the deep state dark cult out of Switzerland. And they named us that last summer, and I laughed. And now they're on it again. And in fact, what's happened, because this is, I want everyone to know this is how it works. The people who need to find each other. And that's a beautiful thing, that those of us who represent the truth with a capital T have nothing to gain from sticking our necks out, and everything to lose. And yet, we can't not do it, because something within us compels us to tell the truth. So we took an oath, first do no harm. And when you look at the harm that is being done, whether it's closing your business, whether it is dividing families, whether it is Black against white, Christian against Muslim, daughter-in-law against grandma, the whole agenda is to divide and conquer. And yet, so many of us have found each other. So I work with a group called the Five Docs, and that's Dr. Larry Pilevsky and Lee Merritt and Sherry Tenpenny and Carrie Maudet and myself. These are colleagues that I never had in the past. I've been the past president of the American Holistic Medical Association. And even then, there were very few of us, but we all knew the history of medicine. We all knew about the Flexner Report, created by John D. Rockefeller, that systematically vilified and closed the herbal med schools, the homeopathic med schools, the osteopathic, the chiropractic, anything that wasn't pharmaceutical, petroleum-based drugs that could be patented because they were not found in nature. That's what is running this agenda. And if you go and you look at any mainstream news program, it is brought to you by Big Pharma, Pfizer, Merck, all the rest of them. They have almost endless amounts of money. I just found out that a little school system in Maine, the Poland, Maine school system, received $7 million from somewhere as long as they kept the kids masked. What is that about? I heard they bought new school buses so they could keep the kids physically distanced. By the way, no kids ever die this. Why would you? Masks don't work. It's like keeping mosquitoes out through a chain link fence. But again, grow or die. You either see it or you're MK Ultra and you're blind. It makes no sense when you just look at the statistics alone. And then now in Israel, you can't go anywhere unless you've had a couple boosters. What do the boosters contain? Well, we could get into that, but anyone listening, if you would like all of my slides and intel on this, go to mainstandsup.org. And my PowerPoints are available there for anyone to use because I want people to know what's going on. And this is the presentations I've given around the country in places I never thought I would go to: Grand Rapids, Michigan, Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I found out that whatever goes on either coast is often not what's happening in the middle of the country. The heartland, they call it, for a reason. And it's quite one. I just got a call from a lawyer I work with. He's taking his children through the Blue Ridge Mountains. They just went to Monticello, the home of Thomas Jefferson. He's actually introducing his children to the history of this country and freedom and what it stands for, and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, all of which have left the curriculum of our public schools. Just like anything about the terrain theory is wiped out of our medical system. Anything about normal birthing seems to be gone. And even the diagnoses, the only diagnoses that are insurance reimbursable now are what they have decided is insurance reimbursable on the iPad. So today's doctors, nurses, healthcare people in the regular conventional system. I'll never forget it because I took a friend into the emergency room a couple years ago and I was stunned. The nurse who did the intake never even looked at him. She had her back to him and she's just checking off boxes on an iPad.
So do you know, I'm sure you know, of course you know, that was a rhetorical question. One of my clients has a friend that is a nurse and she works in the hospital, and she took one of her parents, it might've been her mom or her dad. They both got COVID. They refused to get anything for it. Right, but I don't think that's why they went to the hospital. I think they went to the hospital for something, maybe like a heart murmur or something. But, some of the statistics that people are going by, like the average American is looking at what is being put out on mass media, and they're making decisions based on that because they don't know where else to look. They don't want to question it because they just want it to be handed to them. They want to be told what to do. They don't want to have to research it. And they've trusted the medical system for so long that they don't want to go against it. But it was the idea that, people are saying, the hospitals are full of unvaccinated people, when actually this hospital, and it's here in California, the nurse said to my client, and who then told me that actually, as they come in, no one gets asked if they are vaccinated. They all get checked off as if they are unvaccinated. So it's actually that the vaccinated were the ones in the hospital, not the unvaccinated. But it's the idea of the processing has kind of gone out the window. And it's this assuming, it's the whether I'm too busy, whether I have an agenda, whether I don't care, whatever it may be. But again, it's unless you're in it, unless you're seeing it, the average population and the public think, well, why would they do this? Like someone can't wrap their head around why the owner of a software company could be behind because they can't wrap their head around it. Although I just want to guys, and you said it about the Matrix. So I'm watching Handmaid's Tale for the first time right now. Right. And I realized
I can't watch it because it's the truth and I just can't deal with it.
Right. And I, although I did really enjoy the explosion last night, I want to see how many people died because it's about retribution right now. But the idea that this, because I was like, I said to Doug, I'm like, if there's no hope, I can't keep watching this because it keeps me up at night.
Hope. All right, maybe I can watch it. Okay.
Well, I'm on season 2, and there was some they blew up a lot of people last night, and I was very happy. So, so those of you that are hearing this and haven't watched the show, the amount of repression is sickening and it keeps me up at night if I'm watching it. Why am I watching it? I'm not going to keep watching it if there's not hope. But it's the idea of that our modern day society moves to something so that you think, well, that would never happen. And yet it's kind of happening. And when before this whole thing happened, I was watching Madam Secretary, and that
Me too.
And I had never, ever, 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 ever heard of a pandemic. And all of a sudden at the end of the show, there's a pandemic, there's a passport mandate, and I'm like, and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I don't like the politics of the show. Like the show's good, but anyway, talk about foretelling. Like, guys, this has been happening and being planned. This bioweapon has been in process for such a long time. And I'm not going to go down that path. I just want to let you know that if you're not paying attention, like you can watch a movie, you can watch a show and you disconnect that it's not reality. But it can be, just like you said, if you can think it, you will create it. And sometimes it's the foreshadowing of where people's minds are and where we could go to if we're not careful. So let's go the positive spin on this. Let's go with this whole idea of rebirthing and with rebirthing and what the average person has the power over doing. You know, I know that in the news recently, companies that try to, control people, then the employees leave and they go, oh, never mind. Like, never mind. Like in one of the posts that you had written about all the things you can take away until you get down to, I don't need you. And it's like, oh, I can't control you. So let's deal with, for those of you that are completely in disagreement, that's cool. And maybe you've tuned out and that's fine. But for those of you that are still with us, let's talk about what the individual can do in this situation in terms of a rebirth, in terms of how we can use this picture, this growth or die, to help ourselves, no matter if we got vaccinated because we thought it was the best thing to do, and we choose to, and we stand behind it, or we'll never do it and we'll die not doing it. So,
right. First of all, I'd ask people to just pay attention to what's called predictive programming, where they're telling you what they're doing. I want to give you a very concrete example. So I was in Times Square last Saturday at a rally. And then it was in the news that they would be injecting a benign gas into over 100 subway stations as a drill to see if, just as a drill, in case there was a poisonous gas leak or bioterror attack in New York City. That says to me, if I were you, between October 19th and the 28th, I'd stay out of the subway system if I could. I don't know what they're putting in there. So it's very hard to grow unless you understand that there is an agenda that doesn't include your vibrant health. Now, that's not hard for me to see. The average 65-year-old in the United States is on 6 prescription drugs. And it never made sense to me that health meant, here's a drug you need to take it the rest of your life. Health means, all right, whatever the imbalance is, my body needs a few things, and so I can get back on track. So here's an example. Women who exercise about an hour a day, 5 days a week, let's say, with a walk or whatever, have 70% decreased risk of breast cancer. I'm very interested in those studies. And by the way, the medical literature is full of them. Here's another one. In women who have a person with them in labor, a loving person with them in labor, it speeds the labor up by 50%. So they have the baby 50% faster. And the C-section rate goes down to about 0. If you do an intervention called an epidural, the C-section rate rises, but also so does the fever of unknown origin in the baby. No one knows why this is, but epidurals cause that for reasons we don't know. So what happens? The baby then, because the mother has a fever, the baby then gets a whole sepsis workup, is separated from the mother in the newborn nursery, gets, just in case, a whole bunch of antibiotics, which wipes out the infant's microbiome. An infant goes from a sterile, nearly sterile, not always completely, environment in the amniotic sac, and then it comes out through the vaginal canal and gets colonized with all of the mother's viruses and bacteria, called the microbiome. We have, 3 trillion of these viruses, bacteria. And if viruses and bacteria were supposed to kill us, no baby would ever live through the birth process and the first 3 days of life. But we do things to mess that up all the time. So my entire career has been, how can we support healthy normal? How can we support healthy normal? In the 50s, when baby formula came in, women stopped breastfeeding because everything in the 50s after the war was modern, plastics, new this, new that. And so you didn't breastfeed because you weren't a cow. Modern women didn't do that. So we have been, and also chemical fertilizer came in right after World War II. Why? Because they had all this nitrogen bomb stuff that they had to get rid of, put it on the ground. The plants double in size. They're dead, but they double in size, and you've killed off the microbiome in the soil. So the fertilizer people would come along. Antibiotics were brand new after World War II. We had a family doctor who came around, come to the house, and every time a kid had a cold, he would line the rest of us up and give us a shot of penicillin. We'd see his black car coming and we'd all run and hide in the barn, which was the healthy thing to do. So it was the beginning of this better living through chemistry approach to life. So we've all grown up with the antibiotic era. And believe me, it was a godsend for many, many things, but it's gone too far because nature always finds a way. So now we have these superbugs. So now we have bacteria that no antibiotic can kill, because what nature does is it says, oh, okay, streptomycin, I guess I want to live. Everything wants to live. I want to live. So I'm going to create a strain that's resistant to that. So what do we have in the hospital? The most dangerous germs on planet Earth, because they've gotten stronger and stronger and stronger. They eat our big gun 4th generation antibiotics for lunch. So that's what happens when you push against nature instead of working with nature. So here we are, grow or die. And those of us who know how to work with nature are going to be the ones that survive. And those that are waiting for Father Pharmaceutical or their doctor or their government or their employer to save them will not. I want to give you a very concrete example. I have a friend whose mother was in the Twin Towers. And when the first plane hit, or when they blew it up, which is what far more likely, she was told, just stay where you are until you hear from us, right? Let the experts figure this out. She said, and she walked out with a friend and walked across the Brooklyn Bridge. And her family didn't hear from her for 2 days, because you remember the phones went down and all of that. They were frantic, but she was alive. Everyone else who followed orders died. So what I want people who are listening to do is to say to themselves, what can I do here to be more self-sufficient? Now, I've heard from the Ice Age farmer, who has a big YouTube channel, that we are heading for what's called a solar minimum, meaning that it's going to get colder for a while in the Northeast. I had a chance to convert my wood stoves to something way simpler and, less dirty and all of that. And I said, not a chance. I'm going to keep 2 wood stoves here, because if the gas goes away and my generator doesn't work and whatever, I can keep warm in the winter. So I bought 3 cord of kiln dried 16-inch pieces of wood for my wood stoves. This just feels like the right thing to do for me. Not everyone, that won't be the right thing for everybody. And I think this is the other thing that I want people to understand. There is no follow these rules and you will be safe, like we were taught in school. Just do this. I'm from far enough behind that we would have duck and cover. Like if there's a nuclear attack, just get under your desk. Are you kidding me? I mean, I have friends who have an underground bunker in the Midwest. It's 11 stories under. It's got enough food for, I don't know, 3 years. I have decided rather than do that, I'd rather just, I'll just recycle. I don't care. I wouldn't go to those lengths because I'm not afraid to die. And frankly, what's interesting? All of my frontline people with me, they're very aware of our soul contract. It's like, oh, really? You think you're going to get out of it that easy to just, we got news for you. You're needed. This is the Aries full moon. You're needed on the front lines. So you're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. And the other thing I want people to know is nobody needed to get sick with this thing. Nobody. We have had such amazing treatments from day one. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I want to say to people is while you still can get a nebulizer, you can get them on Amazon, all kinds of them. Get a nebulizer, get some hydrogen peroxide food grade, get some Lugol's iodine solution. And all over the internet, especially Mercola.com, you can find out exactly how to use a nebulizer. Dr. David Brownstein in Michigan treated all of his patients with this condition last winter in Michigan. So they got the same kind of winters as Maine. And nobody died. And he did not need to use the other drugs that, that modern medicine has tried to make you afraid of that are over the counter in India and Mexico. So have some things available. The MMS, the Miracle Mineral Solution of Jim Humble, have that available, kills just about everything. So don't rely on your hospital system. We do need trauma surgeons and we need orthopedic surgeons. Other than that, it's pretty much in your own hands at this point. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but everyone who's really sick, who goes to the hospital and gets put on a ventilator, gets remdesivir. That causes renal failure. You die, the hospital gets $39,000. The hospitals, this is very sobering, everybody. The hospitals are the gas chambers of 2020s. Many people go to the hospital. And then I get all these calls, my husband's in there and he's on a ventilator and they won't let me visit him and he's unconscious. And how can I get the hospital to give him ivermectin? It's like, it's too late.
They cleared it off the shelves way in the beginning.
So I have a friend who's being brought before the board of registration in medicine here in the state because they're saying he's giving too many prescriptions. Now, remember, everybody, this has been an off-label, safe drug. It's over the counter in India and Mexico. It's cheap, used to be cheap. And but now they'll report you for doing what you're completely licensed to do, to prescribe something that's been generic for 60 years. Now, it's interesting. Why would ivermectin, a thing for parasites, be effective? Why? Because they've found about 4 different parasites in the shots.
Yikes. Yikes. Yes. And I heard a doctor speak maybe last year on a video that quickly, of course, got taken down, that the flu season is actually not a flu season. It's a lack of vitamin D season.
That's correct.
And, that was great information to want to share, but of course, quickly it got taken down. So I couldn't share that. So in terms of some of the things you have already recommended for in the case of, there's also what you do to prevent in the front end of this, which
that's the main thing. So one of the other things I would tell people to get some vitamin C. And there's a kind that I bought, I bought bags of it, and it's called bulk supplements ascorbic acid. It's got 4,000 milligrams per teaspoon. It's cheap. You can get it on Amazon. Or if you don't want to, you can go directly to the company Bulk Supplements. Vitamin C was used to cure polio. Now, the CDC, COVID death cult, put out a little warning to doctors that this fall and winter, we would be seeing 5-year-olds with acute flaccid myelitis. How did they know? And what is acute flaccid myelitis? It is polio. It's polio. So remember that back in the day, in the 40s, they cured polio with high-dose vitamin C. How do you do it? You have to go to bowel tolerance. Actually, I take enough every day to form loose stools. You don't need to have an explosion, but loose stools. And that is highly variable. With some people, that'll be a teaspoon. With some people, it'll be 2 tablespoons of this stuff. So there's no dose. One cigarette will plummet your vitamin D in your body to 0. One mosquito bite will plummet your vitamin C to 0. So I want everyone to remember, vitamin C is cheap, it's effective, and you take it regularly throughout the day to create tissue saturation. So let's say that you have to go on an airplane where you're in a closed environment, and airplanes are quite funny to me. They've stopped this one nonsense that I thought was hilarious. Okay, so we're packed in, it's a full flight, it's always a full flight. Then they say to you, in order to institute social distancing, please leave 6 feet between you when you deplane. Are you kidding me?
It's never happened. I've been to Greece. I've been to Mexico. It hasn't happened.
Right. Now, when you went to Greece, did they require a vax passport? No. Okay.
That's why I went to Greece. That's why I went to Greece. It's one of the reasons why Greece became, I went with a bunch of doctors. It's reason why we chose Greece was because we just needed the tests. Yeah. Now there was only one restaurant that we couldn't eat in because we didn't have a vaccine passport. But everywhere outside was fine, and everywhere else was fine.
Warm. Yeah. Great.
Right. Okay. And even just the idea that, like, when we got our test to go, it was $160 for the rapid antigen test here locally. Now I could have driven somewhere and got it for half the price, but it's convenience and time is important for me. But in Europe, it's 10 euros. I'm like if it doesn't just show you how this is not about money, like that should be the first indicator that in Europe, I paid 10 euros for a rapid antigen test, and some of them did it out of the box. The pharmacy down the street, I said, do you do rapid antigen tests? He said, yeah. He opened up the box I could have bought myself, but I needed the paper from somebody else to prove that it was true. So I said, well, can you please print us up something? And then he did. But it was like all of the rigmarole. And at some point, like, come on, guys, like you have to wonder. And I know a lot of you have had the vaccine and you're completely fine with it, and that's cool. And I'm not, right. Whatever's done is done. And this isn't about this. That's not what this episode is really completely about, but it's about the idea of that when we look at our health, and you know how I am about being responsible for everything. You're the creator of your own reality. So what can I control? Myself, everything about myself. And then all the things that are out there. I mean, Dr. William Davis is coming back on the show, so we can talk about Undoctored because he came on for Wheat Belly, and I'm excited to go back to Undoctored. And it's that idea that this is emerging. And I feel a bit of hope in this idea of rebirth, of having us talk about, that slowly but surely there are small and changes, or maybe not small. I mean, I'm very in my world, and I don't watch the news. I'm not on social media. I mean, I'm on there a little bit, but I'm not on there like a ton. And I kind of keep to myself and keep quiet. And like you, plan I eat from my garden. I go to the farmer's market. I am like literally in my own bubble, and I'm going to stay there. But when I go out into the world, which is always shocking, I do shocking, but it's always, it's wanting to empower the people and reach the people who are now intuitively starting to question or think about. And for those of us that are already there, being able to have a better feeling, because again, we still want to the collective, we still want to energetically put out what we want. We want to strongly admit and project a picture, a vision, a reality, 5D Earth that we want, and we want to stay focused on that so intently without wavering that we create it. Because as we know, it's only going to be a few of us that actually push this rebirthing through, while the rest of the new souls on the planet are holding, are trying to stay to their whatever their fear. But it's all the old souls who are going to push this through. So how do we focus on this rebirth? And are there any other examples that you have of the positive side of this starting to kind of break through, like the indicators that this is happening?
The indicators are that the people like you, the people with the big YouTube channels or BitChute channels or Rumble channels, are the news. The truth is that very few people are watching the mainstream media at this point. So the news is these so-called alternative channels. I remember when the New England Journal of Medicine back in the 90s published an article about how much money was being spent on alternative treatments, acupuncture and massage and herbs and so on. And I remember hearing the guy who published it. And this is always funny to me because it's the tail wagging the dog. They say, well, we have to do a better job of letting these people know how dangerous these unproven things are. Again, they're setting themselves up as the arbiters of morality, the arbiters of healing, the arbiters of spirituality that they know and you don't. And I remember that article because it was, just everyone, oh my God, what is happening? And I thought, yeah, because the stuff that you guys are doing, I used to sit with Michio Kushi in his consultation room back in the early 80s with all these people who had been given up for dead by the establishment. They had charts that thick. And they were told there's nothing more we can do for you. So go home and
prepare to die.
In order. Yeah, prepare to die. And then many times when people changed their lifestyle, they lived. And then if they went back, because some of them thought, well, it's my duty to go back and tell them, and they'd go back and it was always the same. Doctor would look at them. I've been in this forever, really. The doctor would look at them and with a blank look on their face, as though, well, and their eyes would go toward heaven where they're searching for, where did I learn that? And they would just dismiss the person instead of what a true scientist would do, which is, wait a minute, I see in your chart here that you had stage 4 prostate cancer or stage 4 breast cancer. And now I see your scans and you're fine. We need to investigate that. Like, wow, that could help a lot of people. They don't. Yeah.
I remember I was telling Doug on the walk this morning about, because I'm preparing for Dr. William Davis to come back and listening to Undoctored. And I know Undoctored was published after I had an article, and I believe it was in the New York Times, and I might have been living in New York City. If that's the case, it was 21 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And if it wasn't 21 years ago, it was when I just moved to California. And I remember this article that I believe was written by a doctor, a conventional medical doctor, who the article was that his patients would come in, he would diagnose them, and he would give them a treatment plan, and they would go off. They wouldn't do his treatment plan. They'd do alternative medicine. They'd come back and they'd tell him. And finally, and he gave all these different stories about different, probably like 5 or 6 different patients. And he finally said to them, why do you keep coming back to me? And they said, because we want your diagnosis. We just don't want your treatment plan. And I remember thinking to myself, like, and that was in a major newspaper. And, and I'm listening to, Undoctored, thinking, what? I'm wondering why this hasn't taken up more, like why people aren't, I work with, Dr. Nisha Winters. She wrote The Metabolic Approach to Cancer, and she's got doctors that she's training. It's about the terrain-based program. Yeah. It's about taking cancer to a place where Western medicine doesn't deal with. It's looking at all the different environmental factors, and I'm doing the emotional stuff, because the emotional piece, I have people who have cancer patients that have had cancer 3 times in the same place. And it's like the one thing they haven't addressed is all the emotional crap that they've been going through.
It's always that. It's always that. I was talking with Dr. Buttar yesterday, Rashid Buttar, and we absolutely agree that it's, first of all, it's the last place people want to go. If that were easy, you never would have developed a cancer or the fibroid or whatever it is. That you will do anything to avoid the one thing that it is. And I know that from my own life. I had to get a fibroid that big to finally realize, oh God, it's my marriage, right?
Oh, I'm with you. I have my whole fibroid story. Yep.
Right.
Right. And my intuition, we talked about that on, I think, on one of the shows, that I was told to have surgery, and I said, I'm not having surgery. And I fought and I didn't do it. And then I ended up going in, and my body said to me, it's time to have some time. And the whole idea that one treatment, which was the uterine artery embolization, when I first looked at it, was said, no. If you want to get pregnant, don't do this. And then 2 years later, it was the reverse. Oh no, this is a fertility preserver. And so then I did that, and I fought with the doctor the entire way during that whole entire process. And she kept arguing with me because her ego was so off the chart. And I kept saying to her, and it was really the reason why I had to go through it, if I haven't already talked about this a million times on the show, because I had a client of mine say to me about the whole woo-woo thing. He said, well, I don't really believe you because you got fibroids. And I said, I hear you.
My God.
I said, but I think the reason I had to go through this is because 3 years ago, when I started the show, or 4 years ago at that point, I had on another physician who did research, who basically talked about how hysterectomies were completely overprescribed. And so I'm thinking, because I've learned this and I'm promoting this information, that everybody else knows this. So I come into the, right, I know, but I come into the hospital situation thinking I'm so like in tune with what's going on right now. And the doctor says I said, will you do this procedure? Don't go over the scans with me. Will you, or won't you do this procedure? And she said, I will. But it's not my first recommendation. I said, what is it? She said, hysterectomy. And it didn't even faze me. Now Doug's freaking out, think I'm going to die. And I'm like, I'm not going to die. And even and I know I told you the story, but the gynecologist said to me, because then I saw her, and she's like, you make me nervous. And I said, okay. I said, isn't it the fact that this could go perfectly, and it breaks down little by little and leaves me, and nothing bad ever happens? And she said, yep. I go, well, that's what's going to happen. And the idea of the lack of epigenetic processing, the lack of neurological additional information. Like, I'm sitting here thinking this system is so broken because we know science that will create this reality when you focus on it. Why would you tell me that I only have a 25, and that's even elevated. I have a 15% chance of this happening. That means I have an 85% chance it goes swimmingly.
But that's what they do. That's the way it works, is that we focus on what could possibly go wrong. So imagine if you're laboring in that arena, what do you think's going to happen? Right. It's going to go to shit.
Because they put it in your head, and they've literally gotten you to program yourself for this reality, which you will create because it's what you're picturing in your mind.
Okay, so that's what we have done with the COVID thing.
Yep.
Everyone is glued to that picture of how many people. Now, what we should have had is the ticker tape of how many people
survived.
Recovered.
Yeah. Survived, recovered.
No, we can't have that, because so people who watch the mainstream media are literally programmed like a robot. And if you don't stop that, quite frankly, you don't have a chance. We have created, I have a friend in Northern California, and she said the ambulance guys are just being called for panic attacks. All they have to do is talk the person off the ledge. They don't need to go to the hospital. They're just panicked. What happens when you're panicked? Your PO2, your oxygen goes down to, into the 80s. We've had so many people, all they didn't need to go to the hospital. They maybe needed a little oxygen, and they needed somebody to hold their hand because they were in absolute panic. And that has been the actual agenda, I think, of Big Pharma, because you can kill people. The hospitals who kill the most get the most money. We have a Sarasota General, by the way, got millions in order to institute their protocol, which contains remdesivir, which causes renal failure, which will kill you. And Big Pharma has so much money, and the money is so dark. It's dark money. You can't trace it. So we've been running the planet with it's a depopulation agenda. Men's sperm counts have been plummeting for 70, 80 years. And, the glyphosate, fluoride in the water to get your pineal calcified, assisted reproductive technology, that's just arisen, so that we've now convinced most women that if they haven't had a baby by 35, that's it for them, unless they get a donor egg. That's another huge expense. And yet, in my training, all my patients at St. Margaret's Hospital for Women on Dorchester Hill were Irish Catholic. The only way to get them from having a baby every single year was to do a hysterectomy in their 40s, because nobody told them that their eggs were old. What they told them is, you're Irish, you will have a big family, you're very fertile. And that's exactly what happened. But now we have 2 generations of women who have delayed childbearing, but at the same time been told your fertility plummets. And oftentimes it doesn't. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. So what is the second most common reason for an abortion? The first is, you got pregnant, you're 18, it's not a good idea. The second, women in their 40s.
What?
Who didn't think they could get pregnant.
I would think rape would have been one of high up on there.
Well, yeah, but that's just who gets pregnant at what age. Okay. So, we think no one after 40 can get pregnant, whether they're raped or not.
Right.
It's that's the number 2 reason, group, women in their 40s, who were told, oh, it's too late, you'll never get pregnant.
Well, I know Dr. Nation, I talked about how in her, people that she's worked with or know that, I think 50 or 52 might've been the average of some of the women that were getting pregnant, in terms of looking at, again, from a natural approach to all their hormones and resetting and everything, but, which is good in terms of this idea that we're talking about in terms of rebirth. And so I just want to, let's go back to, for a second, for people like us, people who are kind of starting to wane a little bit, people are starting to kind of think maybe, and, I had Ainsley McLeod on the show a couple of times, and we did the Old Souls Guidebook, and we talked about that. I think it was actually in the first one, your soul level, that a lot of the majority of the planet was a new soul. I'm like, well, no wonder. No freaking wonder. I was like, okay. So all of a sudden that made me feel a lot better. I was like, all right.
It's true. Those of us who are finding each other, this is funny. So I get a text from my friend, Julie Ryan, a medical intuitive, and she's got a picture of me and Jason Shirka. And she goes, oh, you two, you've had 493 lives together. I said, well, that certainly explains it.
So those of us that are at least, and people listen to my show are old souls, whether they fall on this conversation, we will see. But for those old souls that are struggling, maybe they're around more people. I create my own economy. I'm completely independent. So, but for those that work for people, those that have to be with people, those that have bosses, those that have frayed families, those that, in terms of this participation, and I do truly believe we did a whole entire meditation together as a group on the ascension right now, on pushing through the ascension of the 5D reality that we want to have. But for those that are still on a daily basis, what are some of the things that we can do for our own contribution to the rebirth, contribution to our own rebirth?
The number one thing you can do really is get together with at least one other person who believes like you do, and better 3 or 4. Form a local group. It is the most strengthening thing you can do, because community equals immunity. And when 2 or more are gathered, there will I be also, and that's the Christed consciousness. And magic happens when you get people together. So I started to have meetings in December in my house, December of 2020. And at the time, I thought if I had too many cars in my driveway, my neighbors would report me, and the police would come because we weren't wearing masks and we weren't socially distancing, but I did it anyway. And I said to everyone, okay, this is the Underground Railroad. We are hiding Jews here, and we're the Jews. And I wasn't kidding. But from that has grown a movement, that's mainstandsup.org, has grown a movement that is statewide, and now nobody feels so alone. Now, there are areas that are hearing you where they don't feel alone already. Oklahoma, pretty open. Areas of Colorado, pretty open. There are pockets of oppression. A lot of New York State. I grew up south of Buffalo. My county, Cattaraugus County, declared itself a constitutional county. So it's completely different from New York City. So get together in these little groups, and then you'll find that the resources show up and you can help each other. Like we now have a healthcare worker vaccine mandate in our state, and we have a lawsuit that is against it. We don't know what's going to happen with that, but we do know that here all of the healthcare workers have gotten together. So what do we have now? We have a branch that's reimagining healthcare. The nurses, the doctors, the EMTs who've left the system, and they get together every Monday and they figure out, like somebody's driving by rural Maine and they see an ambulance in someone's yard. There's always an ambulance. What are we going to do? We're going to stop and see, hey, what are you doing with the ambulance? Like we need to create, until this is over, alternative systems. And frankly, I don't think that this is going to be over for a good long while, because no demon goes down easy. Like before they die, the reptile just, whaps its tail around and take as many people out as it can. Why in the world would we now have a mandate for school kids to get a shot that we know creates myocarditis in a small percentage of them? So we're not talking benign. We're talking once your heart cells die, they're done. So we're talking about creating a lifelong cardiac issue. Even if that happened to only 5 people, it's not worth the risk, because no one in their teens ever gets this anyway, without a whole load of pre-existing conditions. But with the grow or die, those people who can see this are the ones whose fertility will be preserved, whose community and whose compassion will be preserved, and the others won't. It's the great culling. And I think we all have to get used to that idea, even though we know darn well we're going to help as many people as we can, no matter what their belief system is. Like there are whole protocols to help people who are having trouble after getting the shot. Attorney Tom Rentz, and you can get this data from rentz-law.com. Attorney Tom Rentz has all the Medicare and Medicaid data on all the deaths following this shot. It's staggering. There have been at least 49,000 deaths within the first 14 days after getting the shot. That's government data from a whistleblower. So we want everybody to know this data. So Rentz-law, RENZ-law.com. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what I'm really glad to hear what you just said. I had my first public live event 2 weekends ago, my manifestation boot camp. I had 40 people that were there. Yeah. I did not ask questions about what they did. I required no tests. I didn't say anything. In fact, I was a little nervous about the hotel because I thought, are they going to make me wear a mask? And I had rented the patio also. And I was like, well, if anyone comes in here demanding that we wear a mask, I'm moving this whole event outside onto the patio.
Right.
No one said a word. And I let everybody do what they were comfortable with. I had an immunity station, which had Cold Be Gone, which is a product that I use, a homeopathic and Manuka honey remedy to put in your nasal biome, to make sure your nasal biome is prepared for taking anything in. I had,
very nice.
I had colloidal silver sprays, both for your hands as well as your mouth. I had essential oils. I had a whole bunch of stuff for people to partake in terms of an immunity station. And I pointed it out. And at the last circle, we're all holding hands. And I told them all at the first circle, I said, look, if you're not comfortable holding hands, just like lock arms. And I think everybody held hands. And by the last day, when everyone was holding hands, after it was over, I said, okay, now go wash your hands. I was like, just because I thought, okay, just to be safe, because everyone's been in no social distancing. But it wasn't about me breaking the rule. It was saying, you do whatever is comfortable for you. I'm not going to make a rule. You do. If you want to wear a mask, cool. If you want to social distance, cool. If whatever is good for you is fine. Because I don't, it is what it is. And I actually just started a meetup here in Ojai like this week. And I did, so nice. I called it Ojai Empowered Manifestors. And I was like, all right, I want to attract people who believe they create their own reality, that want to be empowered, that don't want to be victims. And we'll see where this goes, because I, like you, agree that there are pockets of people who, when we get together, will create and emanate a new reality. And I'm actually now kind of excited. I'm excited about all the women who are going to take their kids out of schools and homeschool them, or create a new kind of school where teachers work and get paid a lot better for teaching kids at home. I'm excited about the communities that are going to come together to create new things because they don't want to be part of the mainstream. So I'm looking forward to what emerges from this. And it's going to start small. It's going to probably be, quiet, but I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. That's how it's done. We need to do it grassroots. And I love that, Ojai, like one of the, the really woke places is got you in it. Good.
Well, it's funny because half of them aren't. It's right. Really divided. And I have to ask my acupuncturist, who's on board. And so he's like, so he constantly texts us. I'm just new here. We moved in May and bought a house in May. And so I'm like, I would have assumed, and Elevate Films, Mickey Plandemic, like he lives here and he filmed half of that here. But of course,
I thought he was in Texas.
Unless he moved, his house burned down in the fires a couple of years ago, but he filmed Plandemic here because I noticed the background. So I think he's here. I think he didn't move from here, but I could be wrong. But I would like to make sure people know. So again, if you would like more of Dr. Northrup, you can find her on all her, I saw that you had maybe it was a post somewhere that had all the different, like the MeWe and the,
and that's on my Facebook page. But it's also over on the website, drnorthrup.com. That's actually, the sort of the central clearinghouse for everything.
And the reason why we landed on Rebirthing the Planet today was because she did come out with the Wisdom of Menopause 4th edition not too long ago. That's then you've got your, what was the other book that you held up with the program?
This is Dodging Energy Vampires. And this has a really good online course that's available on my website. Where people who have, your basic everyday narcissist in their family can learn what to do. I got the world experts together on this. Dr. George Simon, who wrote In Sheep's Clothing. We got Sandra Brown, who wrote Women Who Love Psychopaths. We just talked about cluster B, people who just don't think right. That's all. They don't have compassion. They're not like normal people. And that's about 1 in 5. Now, the basic psychopaths are 1 in 100. But the psychopaths running the planet, that's a whole other level. I also wrote this because I wanted people to have a quick, and this is called, Mom's Guide to the COVID Shot. You can download this for free from timetofreeamerica.com, but it's on Amazon. And we give all the money to mainstandsup.org so that we can pay our amazing lawyer who also represents victims of medical terrorism in Guatemala who were infected with syphilis on purpose by the U.S. Public Health Service and the Rockefeller Foundation, just like the Black men in Tuskegee.
Yeah, there's so much. And for a lot of us, it's hard to listen to. I won't lie that I don't. Well, I know when I want to hear something, I'll log on and I'll find you and I'll find what information you're sharing. I can't handle it every day in it. So I have to say publicly, thank you for being on the front lines for doing this, because I don't have the stomach for it, because it'll knock me out of my center so fast. And it's being able to take in the information with keeping my alignment. And again, focusing on the rebirth that's happening, the rebirth of ourselves, of our country, of our freedom that's going to come, and it might not come too soon, but it's coming. And
we're going to win this.
Absolutely. Because again, the old souls will anchor the planet with these ideas and we'll win just because we're older. And we've already done this, so we already know what to do. And it's fine. But I do appreciate it. I just want to, I was interviewed by Dr. Mindy Pelz on her podcast, and you wrote the intro to her, the Menopause Reset book. And at the end of the interview, she asked me who like to pick a doctor or pick somebody that I follow or that I admire. And I mentioned you. And she said, oh, okay, why? And I said, well, because she's doing the work that not all of us can do. You're willing to let go of your medical license to fight the fight, so to speak, and to keep this information going. And when it's coming in, it sometimes can feel bad. And so that's why people don't want to feel bad. People don't want to acknowledge what the reality of this could be, because they don't understand how someone or people could do this, and it feels bad. It's like why you said about the emotional work. Like I'm doing all this emotional work with doctors and their cancer patients because one, they've had cancer 2 or 3 times in the same place, and they realize that they've done all the treatments and they do all the diet and they do all the extra things and they're still in the same place. It's like, well, the last thing to look at is the emotions. And I came in with like guns blazing when Dr. Nation and I talked about it, and I said, well, she's teaching doctors, and I said, well, what are you doing about the emotions? What are you telling them to do? Because I think people suck at processing emotions. They don't understand it. They don't know how to. I said, so, and that's what I do. And that's what I have trainers. I have a certification. That's what I'm doing. And I want to get in there, and I just want to specialize in helping people process these feelings, these emotions, and to move through that. So again, it's like, I'm in my own little world, creating my own little thing. And that's a part of, I think what's happening now too, is this, who talked about it? Kelly Brogan. Kelly Brogan's article last year about the page. What was it? It was about like the idea of when you're captured. What's the name of the condition that when you're captured and then you become like entranced?
Syndrome.
She wrote an article about that. That was super powerful.
Great. She's great. Very powerful. She's great.
So powerful, but psychologically so on point. So again, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing, and that I appreciate that you're one of the ones leading this charge. I cried the day that I saw what happened to Dr. Mercola with him being bashed all over the news and stuff, because I thought, oh God. So hopefully that those of us that are awake, those of us that are waking up, those of us who, and again, I don't think it has to take that we all make some kind of, movement that is violent or against or pushing against. It's just pushing for. So for those of us that want to make change, just create a community. Like you said, get together with people, take care of yourselves, figure out what you need, keep your autonomy, and then also figure out how you're going to deal with this, and then get excited about what's coming. And I think that to me is the recipe for how we move and create this faster, and we expand out, and we accept and not resist, but we make another plan and we create a new reality. That's it.
You got it. Perfect.
Awesome. Right. So drnorthrup.com probably has everything. Am I right there?
Yep.
Yeah. So to make it simple, drnorthrup.com, but in the show notes will be all the other links that she's mentioned through today's episode and interview. Again, thank you so much for coming back. And I just wanted to give you the platform to talk about whatever was coming up for you. I'm happy to support pretty much anything you're doing. So you're welcome back at any time with any new information or ways to be, because I have a community and I'd like them to also keep up with what we can do, which is a lot, that we can move this thing along and create the reality that we want.
Beautiful. All right. Great.